Welcome everyone to this special one-off video. In this video I'm going to discuss and talk about my list for Warbanner. That'll be the next series of battle reports that I'll be sharing. Warbanner is a 6-game tournament with unique secondary objectives for each battle, as well as using a carnage system rather than the regular scoring system from the rulebook. Carnage system essentially means you're out to kill as many points as possible. Your own losses don't directly affect your score, so therefore quite aggressive lists are highly likely to be brought. One of the considerations in building this list was what I was likely to face. A number of the better players had had discussions with me about list building leading up to Warbanner, and I therefore had a fairly good idea what most of the players were likely to bring. I was expecting 3 Warriors of the Dark Gods lists, each with your typical 2 or even 3 characters that are particularly nasty running around and smashing face. I was expecting 3 Beast Herd armies, each probably fairly well stacked with Minotaurs and Gortax and so forth. I was expecting 2 Ogre Khan armies, likely to have their fair share of big beasts as well, but also a fair amount of shooting power. I was expecting a Saurian Ancient army with 2, possibly even 3 cowboys in it, as well as monsters. I was expecting a Vampire Covenant army, as well as 2 Highborn Elf armies that were likely to field big blocks of Swordmasters or Lion Guard. There were also likely to be a handful of other armies on the table, but they were the armies that I felt I was most likely to face in perhaps 5 of my 6 games. So that had me really questioning the type of list that I was likely to bring. Took me a long time to come up with a list, and one of the things I finally decided on is how am I going to handle monsters and nasty characters. And I figured I have 3 pretty successful tools in my army to handle those things. My Forest Prince on a horse hits pretty much as hard as anyone. Combine that with Divination, you've got Unerring Strike that can threaten those really nasty characters, but it can also give my Forest Prince Stars Align. It can also give him Know Thy Enemy, so a couple of nice buffs there that could swing those combats in my favour. The other great counter to those nasty characters I found is a Tree Father. While many people might see it as fortunate, very rarely have my Tree Fathers failed to win combat against Chaos Lords and Cowboys. You just need 1 successful tree whack and you've got a great chance to kill them outright. The ability to heal the Tree Father through magic as well, to prolong that fight and give you more opportunities, can also make a great difference. So those choices really locked in a fair number of points in my army list. Firstly, locking in the Forest Prince also means locking in a Briar Maiden unit to protect him from alchemy and cannons and so forth. Basically also means I'm looking at taking the Conclave option there, as I want the ability to heal the Prince and to heal the Tree Fathers. So double Tree Fathers, Forest Prince, Briar Maidens. Also wanting Divination means that I need to go with the Matriarch option again, as you can't really fit in a Tree Father Ancient caster and Tree Fathers unless you're prepared to lose a lot of other things. Another thing that I particularly wanted in my army was the double Kestrel unit. These guys have just been so very good for me. Used them exclusively since ETC. They've pretty much won me games almost on their own and have become a must-take option for me. So at that point, nearly all of my discretionary points are spent. I have a few points left in characters and I have core left to fill, and that is pretty much it. That really left me with one last decision. Do I want a BSB or do I want an extra Dryad Matriarch to give me more divination spells, but more importantly to increase the range on my divination, or possibly to take a Matriarch with Druidism? Those were the main options I was looking at. So at that point I thought long and hard about, do I want a BSB? And if I want a BSB, what kind of BSB do I want? Based on the other elements of my army that were locked in, I could pretty much rule out a Blade Dancer BSB as I had no unit of Blade Dancers. I could also kind of rule out a Pathfinder BSB, as there wouldn't be a Pathfinder or skirmishing archer unit for the BSB to go into. The more I thought about this, the more I thought, what do I actually want from my core points? So at this point I thought, right, let's fill out core first and then see what we have left in terms of a BSB or extra matriarchs. So I decided, well, we needed at least one Dryad skirmishing unit. These skirmishing Dryad units have been very effective in the past as a combat unit. They are able to take on some fairly significant things with multiple characters and a champion. They're also able to become quite a good tar pit for characters. So therefore we decided we wanted at least one unit with a champion. But given that I would be 4-dicing most of my divination spells in order to make sure they go off, I decided a second skirmishing unit was also a worthwhile investment. A second champion therefore gives me a second opportunity again to challenge out characters. So for another 190 points, I figure those were points well spent. At this point, I was eyeing up a lot of shooting in my army, and if I went with this option, I probably would go with the extra matriarch and basically end up with a list the same as my GuardCon list. But I thought long and hard about this and thought, do I need multiple scoring units? Probably not. The objectives are not really worth the same amount of points as a 3-point swing on the battle points table. Also, with double Tree Fathers, Briar Maidens, double Kestrels, and the 2 Dryad units, we've got a lot of things that are going to get in the way of line of sight. And at this point, I thought, do I actually need shooting in a Wood Elf army? My main battle plan was going to be to push forward very aggressively, get into combat, and kill as much as possible. So therefore, in core, what units do I have that can support this playstyle? And I figured I have several options. Either a big unit of Dryads, which I have found quite effective in the past, but doesn't give me the option for a BSB, or we could take a big unit of Spearmen and put a BSB in there with the spear. Suddenly we have another very good combat unit, and it is a great counter to some of the things that I expect to come up against at this tournament. Thinking back to the armies that I listed earlier, I anticipate all 3 Warriors of the Dark Gods armies will have nasty characters running around on horseback. I expect all 3 Beast Herd armies to have a general on a chariot. I expect the Ogre Khan armies to also look at fielding ridden nasty things. I expect 2, maybe 3 cowboys in the Saurian Ancient list. The Highborn Elves, again, probably a chariot with a general on it. So a block of spears that can get distracting, that are going to be stubborn for a long time, and let me countercharge with Tree Fathers or my Forest Prince or the Kestrels, were likely to be a very solid core to my front line. The more I thought about this option, the more I decided, actually, I don't think I need any shooting units. one scoring unit will probably be enough in this tournament, and going with a big block of spears that's going to be distracting, that I can buff further with divination as well, it really just helps that push it forward and really be in their face turn 2, super aggressive. So that is basically the thinking behind my list. My plan will be to deploy aggressively, try and take first turn most of the time, push forward and basically smash face. Hopefully we can use our Tree Fathers and our Spearman unit to tie units up in combat and then get a counter charge with the Kestrels, perhaps a Tree Father or the Forest Prince. A little bit of an issue perhaps with not much chaff, but we can use our Dryad units that way, we can use our Matriarchs that way, we can use the Kestrels that way, so lots of options there. A lot of magic in the list. Again, unfortunately, no room for the Ring of Fire. Never quite seem to be able to fit that in my list, but looking at the armies I'm likely to encounter, I figure I have a lot of answers to monsters and to nasty characters, and that shooting was probably going to be fairly ineffective against the armies that I was going to face. So an interesting list, I think, for this tournament. Really looking forward to seeing how it goes. In my 2 warm-up games, it had performed quite well, so fairly optimistic that I was in for a good weekend of games. So very shortly we'll have Battle 1 online, and that is against Brian, who is playing the Warriors of the Dark Gods. I issued a grudge match to play Brian, as I don't often get to play him. He's one of the really nice guys on the tournament scene, fairly useful player, usually finishes pretty close to the podium, if not on the podium, so it should be a good game, and really looking forward to playing him round 1. So that is my thinking and behind my list. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback in the comment section below. Was this useful? Did I explain my thinking clearly? Did I give you the information you're looking for? Is there something that I haven't explained that you'd like to know more about? Please feel free to comment down below. Like if you haven't liked, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and we'll look forward to bringing you our 6 games from Warbanner.